Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the For Every Beautiful Body YouTube series. Today, we are joined by Bree. Bree Tiana is based in Melbourne, Victoria, and is a distinguished model confidence coach, family violence advocate, podcast host, and the current title holder of International United Ms. Australia. With a deep commitment to empowering women worldwide, Bree leverages her personal journey to inspire and motivate others. Through sharing impactful stories of lived experience, she encourages women to embrace their inner strength and create the future they truly deserve. Hi, Bree, how are you today?
I'm really good, thank you. I feel like I can't even follow up based on that introduction.
No, it's amazing. It's a big one because you are so accomplished and do so much. So we're so excited to have you on today to hear a little bit more about you and your journey. So, can you share a little bit more with us about you as a person and your mental health journey and what inspired you to speak openly about it?
Yeah, so my mental health journey is very complex, but also just I feel like it can be summarized quite well, which is that I live with complex chronic illness. And as a result of that, there is times when my mental health becomes extremely depreciated. And one of those experiences, or one of the most significant experiences that I've ever had, was actually when I was about 14 or 15 years old, and I was given a terminal diagnosis. So the prognosis didn't look good, and I had been advised essentially that people with my combination of complex chronic illnesses didn't usually live past or have a life that was sort of fruitful and abundant past about 5 years from their diagnosis. So they really started to talk to people being diagnosed, and then from that diagnosis point, usually getting about 5 years where they over time would see that they were succumbing to their illness. So that was really, really hard to hear. As a 14-year-old version of me, I wasn't even sure that I really understood the complexity of what they were telling me. The way that they described the complex chronic condition that I had was essentially that my muscles were concreting, so hardening over time and actually stopping the what we call mobility of my gastrointestinal tract, but also affecting key areas like my heart and lungs. So hearing something like that when you are a teenager and you're just coming into and discovering yourself is earth-shattering. Thinking that you wouldn't live to see, your sister get married or your brother graduate high school was a tough pill to swallow. And it's still something that I reflect back on now and think, wow, that was a significant portion of my life where I genuinely believed that I was going to die.
Mm.
And it was not only, it wasn't something that was kind of like concocted in my head. It was actually something that genuinely the people around us, my family, our specialists, the medical teams, they kind of all took on board this diagnosis as this is kind of what it is. And everyone was following the same grain. No one really seemed to question it too much of, this is just your trajectory. This is just what it is. So, being 14, not really knowing anything about the world, I was like, well, if I'm going to die, I want to experience everything. I want to live life to the fullest. I want to make bad decisions. I want to do silly things that I wouldn't have otherwise done because I want to know that in the time that I had left, I lived. So,
Mm.
it is quite a sort of sad way to start a mental health journey, but mental health and mental ill health experiences are really difficult. They're not something that you can sugarcoat, and they're something that happens to a vast majority of the population as well. Those acute experiences or those long-term experiences are something that unfortunately many of us do go through. So, on my particular journey, I had this experience, and again, it was over a number of years where slowly I was losing who I actually was. And I wasn't really sure, what was it that I was going to leave behind? Did I want to leave a legacy? Did I want to kind of inspire people? And I was kind of grasping at straws a little bit as to like, what is it that I actually want to leave behind? Do I just want people to feel comfortable that they knew me? Do I actually not want to have any friends at all because I don't want to hurt anyone when I do eventually succumb. So there was all of these challenging emotions, challenging complex emotions that a young person should never even have to think about and go through. Now, I'm going to flash forward for a moment and actually go to when I was about 19. I finally started to question, I'm 19. My time limit's up. What's going on? I'm sick, but why am I not as sick as someone who would have died from this already? So I started to question all of that. And what eventually we found out was that the framing of what had actually occurred was vastly different to what my condition presentation was actually. So I had developed a end of life care plan. I had planned a funeral. I had saved lots of money to cover the expenses of my essentially my funeral fund because I didn't want to leave, my family to have to pay for things like that. And I had made all of these steps, which a young person should never ever have to make. And then to be told that that wasn't actually correct and I actually would be potentially okay with the right treatment path and the right support was absolutely shattering. Because not only had I thought I was going to die for the last 5 years, but now I was faced with an even bigger battle, which was then explaining to people why I wasn't dead,
Mm.
which it's such an unreal thing to think about. But the reality is, nobody just forgets something like that. Everyone thinks about, there was a really significant portion where we were really advocating for you. We wanted to help you in the best possible way. We wanted to make you as comfortable as possible. But then to kind of hear that, no, they got it wrong, it brings up a lot of questions. Lots of people have questions that you yourself, unfortunately, as a person in that experience, often can't answer. So, one of the, I wouldn't say even bigger mental health battles, but one of the more complex journeys was then explaining how how wrong that medical journey was and how um, I guess earth-shattering it was as a young person to do things potentially that you otherwise wouldn't have done and you know have a funeral fund and have planned all of these things and have knowledge in how to care for somebody at the end of their life and how to plan for that and how to plan for your funeral and your family and all of those sorts of things. It was really, really interesting for some people, but it was also my life. And it was something that was really, really tough for me to go about literally day by day, explaining to people, well, hello, I'm still here. And it is something that the more I grow as a person, I'm now almost in my 28th year of life. I think more and more about how in the world is this something that not only has happened to me, but keeps happening across the world? How is it that we have so many medical advancements and so much, mental health support and chronic illness support and I guess medical discoveries being made every single day, and yet something so, I guess, different in comparison. I'm not going to say it's not complex, but something so small in comparison could be gotten so completely wrong. And so that's kind of where my mental health was at its worst, and that mental health journey has been something that's always come from that. So when I had inevitably this large sum of money that I thought I was going to spend on my funeral, but also this newfound experience of life, I was like, I need to do something about this. And I didn't know who I was. I didn't really know what I wanted to achieve because all of a sudden I got all of these years given back to me, all these experiences that I never thought I would have given back to me. So I was like, naturally, I'm just going to go over and discover the world and go everywhere I can and absorb as much culture and as much opportunity as possible because you never know when that experience is going to get taken away from you. So it really made me grateful for, even though I went through that whole experience, grateful for the life that I do have and the days that I have. So I went across the world. I lived in London for almost a year, or 40 minutes out of London, but still kind of London-like. And I got to travel to incredible places. I went to 25 countries in a year, and some of them were stopovers, some of them were a couple of days, weekend trips, and things like that. But I got to experience so much of life. Some of my best and most cherished memories are still from those moments. And what was once my funeral fund but kind of became my discovering myself money. And it was the most challenging year for me as well, because whilst going through everything that I was going through, in the back of my mind was still all of these unanswered questions. Still those conversations with lots and lots of people around, so how are you still here? And it was something that I was kind of balancing a lot. And then after that year kind of was up, I came home. And in that experience as well, I came back to a lot of people with still a lot of questions that they didn't feel comfortable asking kind of whilst I was overseas. So that experience then kind of dragged on for an increased amount of time, a significant amount of time, where I ended up just kind of becoming a bit of not only a self-advocate, but an advocate for medical misdiagnosis and what that can do to a young person's mental health. So that's where I am today.
Wow. What an amazing journey you've had. And I'm so grateful that you feel so comfortable sharing that with all of our guests because I know how hard it can be to speak about that. So thank you so much. So, in all of those hard moments that you had, and with people asking you questions and you not even knowing the answers, is there something or someone that really helped you in those low moments?
I think knowing that over time, the responses from people were genuinely that that must have been the toughest experience. And I remember at the time I was just going through it and I was like, yeah, this is tough. But I kind of brushed it off. But that reinforcing and validating the fact that this is one of those experiences that it's like you don't want to have, but also like it's actually unbelievable that this is still something that occurs for people across the globe. So knowing just how profound the experience itself was, I think that was really something that was quite validating. But for a long time, I didn't, like I said before, I didn't have the words. I actually didn't quite understand the gravity of the situation because I was young, my prefrontal cortex hadn't quite developed. So I was kind of brushing things off and just in denial a little bit. But over time, that validation of just how significant of a circumstance that I had lived through was, and just how much I kind of took that in my stride was something that has allowed me to reflect on it, a lot more critically. And there was definitely times where I wondered, I did think about suicide and I did have suicidal ideation. And I thought, why am I still here? If I only have 5 years, what's the point of not just kind of ending my pain and suffering or ending the pain and suffering for other people earlier in order to allow them to have that grief process and maybe move along a little bit faster. But I think about that now, more than 10 years later, and I think, imagine if I did. Imagine if I took my life believing that I was going to succumb to that illness at that point in time. Now, it's it's still something that is so sad for me because I know that there are other young people and there are other people across the world who will be getting medical misdiagnosis every day and potentially be thinking some of the same things. And at the time, you don't know that they're a misdiagnosis. You do genuinely believe that your world is crumbling down around you. And so every single person who kept telling me to push and every person who told me that they were brave and that sort of thing, at the time I probably brushed them off. But having all of that over time and having that so consistently was something that just kept me going. And keeping me going kept the lights on, and keeping the lights on kept essentially my family safe. And it allowed them not to have that grief process that they could have otherwise had. So I was very dependent on my community to support me at that point in time as a young person, and the validation of my experiences being valid, and me feeling allowed to feel the way that I felt about them, that was something that is unparalleled. Because when a young person brushes themselves off because that's their experience, that's one thing. But when a professional or an adult with, a person in power or an adult or someone that you look up to brushes you off, it has a completely different impact. And when your mental health is compromised, relying on your community means absolutely everything.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's so beautiful that in that time you didn't really realize, but now reflecting on that, they're actually the people who essentially keep you alive as well. Amazing. So, as now International United Miss Australia, how are you using your platform and your community and your experiences to really advocate for those people that are going through misdiagnosis or their own mental health journeys?
Yeah, so I have a podcast called Raise Your Voice, the podcast, which is an opportunity for young girls and women across the world to come together and speak about their experiences, whether those lived experiences be anything from chronic illness, mental health, business adventures, entrepreneurship, whatever it may be. The podcast itself shines a light on each person's individual lived experiences of any kind and really highlights that each person is genuinely inspiring in their own way. In my reflections on the podcast, I usually do an episode roughly every other week where I'll speak about some of my own personal experiences and examples of where I've incorporated more positive mindset or my own personal reflections into my daily life and how that's actually helped me develop my mindset or sort of lean away from feeling isolated or feeling mental health depreciation, and also reflecting on other people's journeys or journey topics in my own life. So, as well as complex chronic illness, I've had experiences with family violence, complex chronic illness, mental health. I've worked in hospitality, I've traveled overseas. So lots of people's experiences are very transferable. And so not only do we get the perspective of the person who's presenting that week, but we also then the following week have that perspective of, whilst I may not be in their shoes, here's some different shoes that you might be able to try or relate to in another way so that people can feel more connected to the community. And over time, it's actually built a community of like-minded women and girls who have had very similar life experiences. And whilst you and I may be from different parts of the country, we've had lots of shared experiences in that, we've both experienced bullying, we've both had experiences modeling and so on and so forth. And that's allowed us to connect in a new way. And the biggest thing that I think, or the most important thing that I think, is that women in today's society and all people within today's society lack a level of connectedness that we once had. If I look back sort of 50 years, women used to go to country clubs together, or they used to go out for dinner or teas, or, they'd go dancing. But we do lack that kind of connectedness that we once had. So bringing people together in this spoken format allows people to form that connectedness and that community in a new and different way. And that's what I really want to bring to the international stage when I go to internationals, is showing people that no matter the distance between them, there is a common understanding that can be reached with each and every person.
That's so amazing. We are so excited for you to watch your journey to internationals, and you've already made everybody so proud. So I hope you're so proud of yourself as well, because clearly from where you were as a 14-year-old to now is a huge difference. And now, can you tell us a little bit about what that huge difference is within your mindset and your self-worth? Like, how do you define it now compared to how you defined it then?
Yeah, so when I was younger, I used to self-doubt a lot. And when I self-doubt, I'd also criticize myself for self-doubting. So I, might not think I was good enough. And then I'd have this internal struggle. It was like an internal dialogue in my head about, you shouldn't feel that way. You should feel better. And it was almost like I was arguing with myself over what I was feeling in those moments. And now like I said, over 10 years later, I really do step into the space of, sometimes we do get these moments of self-doubt, for example, and they come in and you think about them and you go, that's okay. Here's some logical reasoning in the mix and some more opportunity for you to kind of think about it, reflect on it, not criticize yourself, not tear yourself down, but just reflect on it and then move past it. And it's not about having an argument internally. It's not a sort of internal power struggle that you have with yourself. It's about reflecting and accepting that this is just kind of sometimes a fleeting moment or an intrusive thought that comes up, and it's not something that has to define who you are. So it's kind of like anything that comes into your head. Is this something that is going to serve me? And if it's not, just sort of giving it the flick, because life is too short to spend it thinking about things that just make you feel bad. If it's not going to add value to your experience in that day, in that moment, let it go, because there are other opportunities that will come up, and there'll be plenty of, self-doubt that comes up in the future, those intrusive thoughts, but it's about thinking about what can I offer myself and what can I offer the world today. And just taking it day by day is genuinely how you build that evidence that you've got this over time, because you can back yourself, you build that evidence, and you know that you are with you on your entire journey.
That is so beautiful. I feel like that will really resonate with a lot of our watchers and guests too, because having a positive mindset really does and can affect your own mental health journey as well. So I think it's such a beautiful coincide as well. You kind of already answered it, but is there another clear message or piece of advice that you could give to anybody that's going through what you went through or going through their own mental health journey, or even is just a watcher and needs a little bit of a positive light in their day to day?
I think something maybe a little bit different to what I have said already is that sometimes when you speak up, people won't hear you. And I think it's a hard truth to accept, especially as an adult, thinking that there's been maybe opportunities of young people in my life or in my community where they have spoken up and haven't felt heard. But it shouldn't stop at just one opportunity. You should push and push and push, because each person, every single person listening and every single person looking for that reason, why should I stay? Or, why should I keep fighting through this mental health battle? You should be thinking about, what what could happen in the next 80 years? What could I achieve? How could I positively impact somebody else so that they don't go through the same experiences that I go through? And I think it's so important to just reflect on the fact that not every person will hear what you have to say, just like not every person speaks the same language. Some people's communication skills never develop, and that's as someone who works in kind of a behavioral change and behavioral health work space. Some people never develop communication skills to get what they need to say out. But whilst you have the opportunity and whilst you have the space to reflect, even if in some ways it might feel like it's depreciating your self-worth or feeling really critical, every time you have an opportunity to speak up, speak up. And even when you think there isn't an opportunity, speak up anyway. Because at the end of the day, remember, you're fighting for you. And the only person in the world that can advocate for you, and it feels cliche because I heard this so many times when I was younger and when I was going through this, but nobody in the world can tell your story quite like you can. And your parents might not listen. That's the reality of it. Your teachers might not listen. Your coaches might not listen. But somebody on the street might listen to you more than you've ever heard or felt before. So you never know the ears that are going to change your life. And you never know the opportunities that are going to come up for you, the positive opportunities, the incredible opportunities to represent your country on a global scale, if you don't speak up for yourself and if you don't take that chance on yourself And sometimes it means pushing and pushing and pushing, but only you can do that for you.
I love that so much. Thank you so much, Bree, for being on the For Every Beautiful Body YouTube series. We are so honored to hear you and hear your story. We can't wait to watch the rest of your journey. But before we go quickly, can you tell everyone where we can find you?
Yeah. Best place to connect with me is on social media. So Instagram is a big one. So my screen name, is that what we call them now? My screen name is at BREETIANA underscore, so Bree Tiana. And if you click on there, you can go through any of my pages. For anyone wondering and who hasn't got social media, you do not need social media to kind of follow along with the journey. You can log on to www.instagram.com/BreedTiana underscore / and you'll still be able to see my content and keep up to date with things that are going on in my life. So thank you so much. And if you're ever wanting just an ear to listen or having trouble with advocating for yourself, please reach out because I've been through the experience, but I'm also a professional that works in the space supporting people through behavior change. So if you ever need to be connected with resources, I am more than happy to help.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Bree. Again, we're so honored to have you on. Can't wait to watch the rest of your journey. And thank you for jumping on and sharing your journey and your expertise advice with all of our guests today.
Thank you.